It has been 10 years since Disney purchased Lucasfilm from George Lucas, and there have been 8 completely released live-action movies or series, and we're going to take a look at all of them today on this episode by ranking them. We love them all, of course. We're Star Wars fans. Star Wars fans like Star Wars, I think. And we are here to have... Yeah, I know. We're here to talk about those a little bit later and have a good time with some other topics here on the Resistance broadcast. So thanks everybody for joining us on this Monday, middle of October, 2 weeks away from Halloween. I'm John. That's James. That's Lacey. James, what are you being for Halloween this year?
You know, I know I'm going as Luigi at one point.
Luigi.
Yeah, Bennett is really big into Mario, which is perfect timing because the Mario movie's coming out and everything. But
it is.
He's into Mario right now, and he bought me for my birthday some Luigi costume stuff.
Oh, that's fun though.
Wow.
Or wait, no, that was Father's Day. I was like, that was too long ago. That wouldn't have been the case. Yeah, no, it was Father's Day that he got that stuff for me. To be
in
Luigi.
advance of Halloween?
I think so. Yeah.
Wow.
I mean, not that it
Kid
hasn't.
prepares. Father's Day's in like June.
Yeah. I think he just was really into Mario and he saw the Luigi outfit and he's like, oh, this is perfect for Dad.
Right.
He could be Luigi.
Nice.
I could be Mario.
That's cute.
And then what is Rachel Princess Toadstool? Is that the deal?
Actually,
Peach.
no. I think I'm looped into Luigi because he just was buying the gift for the Father's Day thing or whatever. But
James just goes, I refuse to
No,
be
wait a second. Why did they did sort of change her name from Princess Toadstool to Peach? When did that happen and why?
that happened in the games. I think it
N64.
happened. No, I think it happened before
Mario
Or no.
Kart?
Sorry. What I mean to say is they're aware of that in the games. There's 2 characters. There's Daisy and Peach. Those are 2 separate characters. But you're right that at one point they changed the name from from Toadstool to Peach. And I actually think I could be wrong on this, but I actually think it might be the Mario Brothers
Donkey Kong?
movie
Oh.
where they gave her they gave her a name. You're thinking, okay, wait, sorry. There's Princess Toadstool, but then there's Daisy, and then there's Peach. I think Peach is Princess Toadstool.
According to Reddit, which we know is always accurate, in Japanese, Peach was always known as Princess Peach for the Japanese versions of the games. But in America, she was called Princess Toadstool in the Nintendo version.
Such a lovely name. Really rolls off the tongue.
Right. And then, well, she owned it, though, you know? And then when 64 came out, they merged them.
What did I say?
Yeah.
But she became Princess Peach Toadstool.
Yeah,
But then they just call her Peach on, like, Mario Kart.
What did I say, guys? Lacey's a gamer. She knows her stuff. I said 64.
Called it culture.
But then Daisy was because of the movie, right?
I don't think there's Daisy at all.
No,
Daisy's
100%
Daisy's
there's
the
Daisy.
brunette one with the yellow outfit.
Yeah.
She came in Mario Kart.
I was out of the game by then. Yeah. Lacey, what are you being for Halloween?
I have no idea.
It's your first Halloween as a mom.
I
You're
know.
gonna dress up Daisy?
She's going to be a strawberry.
Oh, that's cute.
Yeah, it is really cute. I made her wear the beret a couple months ago. It looks ridiculous. What am I going to be? I was really tempted. So I have a problem with Halloween costumes. And my problem is I'm always trying to be the popular thing like a year or 2 after it's popular. I don't know why. I really want to be a Squid Game guard this year.
That is so ridiculous.
I really want to be a Squid Game guard. I looked at the jumpsuit. I was like, all I need is the mask. I can just scare kids in my neighborhood.
Do you know why that's ridiculous?
Are you a Squid Game guard?
No.
Oh.
Because 2 weeks after Squid Games came out on Netflix, I was like, guys, I want to take one of those little cookies that they carve so they don't get killed and put TRB in it and tweet it and put it on social media.
I told you it was so dumb.
And you go, it's too late. The show came out 2 weeks ago. And now here we are 6 years later. And Lacey's like, I'm going to be the guard from Squid Games.
Okay, first of all,
get out of here.
There is a time frame to make internet jokes. And
Oh,
if you don't fall into
please.
that time period,
Please.
you look out of touch.
No.
Speaking
because
of time
stuff
periods,
came out well after that.
Daisy's
They got
first
a lot of traffic.
appearance was in 1989, Super Mario Land.
Oh, nice.
And
I was wrong
then
about
she
that.
showed up again in 91. And then she was also in something else around that time. Like she was a playable character in Mario Tennis. But then the big thing was that when they did the movies, 1993 Super Mario Brothers movie, they gave her the name Daisy. And I think that was the first big public, everybody was going, what?
That makes no sense. Yeah.
Who's Daisy? You know, like
I love
they
that
hadn't
that's
they
the
hadn't
thing
know
that they were like, forget
they knew-
everything else with that movie.
they knew Peach or they knew Toadstool, but they didn't know.
Mm. All right, John. So what are you being?
I'm not sure yet. Still tossing some ideas around.
I love that you asked both of us, like, I felt like you were waiting for us to ask you. and
No.
then I think I'm going to be
Johnny's
Squid Game,
my
although I'm
son-
really short, so I feel like I can't get away with that.
Hmm.
My
Aren't you a
Halloween
little short
decorations,
for
though.
a squid trooper?
Yeah. My decorations on my house, though, are legit, and our street is, like, super competitive without anybody ever saying they're competitive. I'm basically making this up, but I like to think that we're all competitive, so we're trying to step it up. We got lights, and we got spiderweb. Matt's building a Michael Myers figure to sit in an Adirondack chair, and he's got, like, these torch speakers that are going to play the Halloween music.
Just pay me. I'll show up in there. I'll sit there like a mannequin. Then when the kids walk up, I'll walk after
You
them.
want to come? I have a good neighborhood. You and the kids can walk around if you want.
Well, it might cause problems. Also, I might get shot too. For all we know.
When there's people that do creepy stuff on our street all the time. There's this like clown thing that follows you when you drive by at the end of the street. It's creepy.
Nope. Yeah, I'm not sure what I'm doing. My son Johnny's going to be a monster truck driver because he's just obsessed with monster trucks right now.
Does he have like the inflatable little outfit that he drives around in?
Does he watch
By the way,
Blaze?
this is a Star Wars podcast.
I know. I didn't know we were going to go fully down to the full biography of Princess Peach. I was just making a joke, but
Oh my gosh. Happy Halloween.
anyway.
Halloween ended this weekend though. Halloween ends.
We are not sure about what we're doing with Daisy. We're tossing around a couple of ideas there. So that's that. But we are here to talk Star Wars, yes. Just a reminder, TRB live this Wednesday. We're booting James for the week. Get out. Goodbye.
He's in another castle.
Yeah, he's going back to Galaxy's Edge again.
Do you
Guy
get it?
has
Did you get the joke?
real estate there.
I'm not
Yeah.
going back to Galaxy's Edge.
You're not?
He's going to the scary party. Not
Yeah,
so scary party.
we're only going to Magic Kingdom for the one night.
Oh, okay.
That party is so fun. You're going to get so much candy.
But no, yeah, it'll be me and Lacey. Maybe a guest. We'll see. TBD on TRB. But join us anyway, 9 p.m. East live Wednesday to talk about episode 7 of Andor. Excited about that. But here we are to talk to you about a bunch of stuff.
We
And
spent almost 10 minutes talking through Mario and Halloween costumes.
I almost segued us into our first segment, and you had to reiterate that to
I'm
make it
sorry.
even longer.
I'm sorry. Wait, can I
Is there
tell my
anything
story
else?
from the airport?
No. You told that for 40 minutes.
I'm a detective now. Go back and watch it.
All right. James, we have a segment called Will of the Force. Let's do it.
I fear nothing, for all this, as the Force wills it.
Will the Force is brought to you by Patreon, and we're going to kick it off with one of our patrons' submissions. Joey sent us the question because, he's a patron, and he said, hey, I'd like to know the answer to this question, and I'm going to submit it, and here we are on the show asking or answering the question, will we see Cobb Vanth in Mando Season 3? John, you get to go first on this one. Any chance that silver-haired fox or whatever you want to say, whatever the term is he coming back for Season 3? Well, that's what people say, right? I forget the
James,
term.
like, he's hot, right? Everyone says he's hot? Okay,
or
cool.
salt and pepper or something?
No, Silver Fox is correct.
Usually I get called Silver Fox. Yeah.
No, you don't.
Yep. Every day almost.
guy.
Whether it's the lady at Duncan, who knows? All right, here's the deal. Cobb
That
Vanth
seems
is
about
going
right.
to be in
Just the lady
Mando
at Duncan.
Season 3. And then I think because he has to see Peli Motto, she's going to be back. He's going to go to Tatooine again. And who's there? Running the show? Cobb Vanth. He'll be there with his robo shoulder. Drinking some spotchka.
Lacey, do you think he's coming back?
I'm just thinking about John going to Duncan and some lady being like, "You're a silver fox," and John being like, "What, ma'am? It's
Lady.
7
I'm
a.m."
going to mention that on the podcast.
They're like college girls who are just like, oh my God, this guy's the best.
You know, it's not college girls saying anything.
I love how you talked over my whole answer. So I wasn't even going to stop. So I purposely kept talking. So the audience is probably already annoyed. We spent 10 minutes talking about Halloween costumes when we were supposed to spend like a minute on it.
Okay.
And now here we are going on with this.
I love that this is coming from the guy that's like, they love when we banter. They love when we talk about other things than Star Wars. And the moment that I do it, he's like, you need to get in line. You need to keep it together.
When you start talking for 40 minutes about something, it's like enough already.
We need a meme of somebody of Andor being like, "Is it on a rail? Is it on rails?" And me and Lacey being like, "No, nope, off the rails."
No.
All right.
Lacey, will we see Cobb
I can't
Vanth
wait
and
to
Mando
spend
season
6
3?
minutes going through our rankings later because we have no time left.
Okay. Someone go through and cut all the clips together of John being like, "You guys love talking about whatever, so let's talk about whatever."
There's nuance to that. There's good tangents, and then there's rambling nonsense. And that's what this has been.
Everything I say is important.
I hope this is someone's first episode, and they're like, "This is the worst Star Wars podcast I've ever listened to in my life."
Oh my God.
Never listening again.
All right. Cobb Vanth is definitely coming back for Mando season 3. He's a fan favorite character. Timothy Oliphant is fabulous. And we had that clip of him at the end of Book of Boba Fett where he's in the Bacta tank. So he's going to take over as sheriff. It would make sense that he is the guy that we see in season 3.
100%. Well, no, I'll say 99% because there is a chance that they do Book of Boba Fett season 2 or whatever, and he doesn't show up till that because he's technically more linked now to that. But I think Mando season 3 is the spot for him. That's where they're going to meet up again. I'm excited to see him back. He was, I think still to this day, maybe that first episode of season 2, with his appearance and all that, is my favorite Mando episode.
I was going to say your favorite. You always say that.
So I think the fact that we got the hint at the end and Boba Fett has the line about like, oh man, maybe this whole thing isn't what it was cracked up to be. Maybe I'm not meant for this. And then showing Cobb Vanth, they're gonna show him again. They're coming back to that character. So get excited, Joey, that you'll see him again. All right, let's move on to the next one here. If Ahsoka is still being produced as a one-shot limited series, will it be followed by another series with Ezra as the main lead? Lacey, you get a chance to go first on this one. Any chance that Ahsoka is keeping to its promise, one-shot limited series, and we're actually going to see more of an Ezra show taking the lead?
So I think the Ahsoka series is going to be a one-shot. However, I do think all the characters that we see in Ahsoka are then going to go elsewhere, like into the Mandoverse, into that kind of culmination event that Kathleen Kennedy had spoken about on Disney Investor Day. Now, obviously, there's a caveat of there have been many things that have been canceled or moved around or plans that have been changed. But I really do think that this is just the beginning that we've seen with those characters for like the Rebels group in live action. And they wouldn't be bringing all these characters together if they were just going to do it like one and done. I think they're going to carry these through to other series. I don't think he's going to be the lead, though.
John, what do you think?
It's really tough because, Ezra was our main protagonist for Rebels, so people could say like, well, he already had his moment. Now let's give Sabine the spotlight or something. And, she's, I don't know if it's been confirmed yet, but I mean, she's definitely showing up in Mando. Everything with the Darksaber, Bo-Katan, it's all right there.
I think end of season 3, she's showing up.
Yeah. I mean, at some point, for sure. And then, the whole culmination event thing that Kathleen Kennedy talked about, I went back and looked at her exact quote. Like, that was heavily leaning upon Rangers of the New Republic being a part of that. So I don't know if the culmination event is still happening how they envisioned it. But you're casting your live action Ezra. He's a Jedi. He's a fan favorite. He's gonna have a future. Now, how they tell that story and how he is gone from the sequel trilogy, which is still like 20 years after this time, because this is all taking place in the Mandalorian era, remains to be seen. But I would like to see more. I mean, we've seen so much of Ahsoka, so I don't think seeing more of Ezra in a lead spot would be ridiculous, especially now that he could be like fully a Jedi master, so to speak, not in the shadow of Kanan and Jarrus or dealing with the Thrawn stuff. Like, let's get him past that. I think we've been waiting to find Ezra, and like you said, Lacey, it's not just, oh, we found him. It's like, no, now we found him, and now we can see Ezra really do some cool stuff. So I say, yeah, I think so.
I say no. I think that they will do Ahsoka, and that will be its own thing. And what you guys are saying, I think, is also true, that they will have these characters that they've been clearly building up to. They've been feeding us Sabine in, like possibly Mandalorian season 3, and then also in Ahsoka. And I don't think that they would do that. They find Ezra, and then, maybe the two of them are romantic or whatever. But like, you'd have to build that, especially for people. Like, you might be able to buy that Sabine was going after her husband or something like that, and then they found him and they're like, oh, they're together again. But it's like, we've never seen that romantic tension. So if you want to tell that story, you have to let those two be together for a while. But the only thing that hangs me up on this is that the next show after this would be Ezra, and that would be the title of the show. I think it would be way more likely Sabine led. And I think even more than that, they might do something different, like a bad name off the top of my head, it's like The Rebels or something like that. And it's just like about the gang or the group or something. And I know that doesn't even make any sense.
What a show called Ghost Crew.
Yeah, or something like that. Yeah. I don't see it being in the vein of The Mandalorian, Boba Fett, Obi-Wan, Andor, and the next one's, Ahsoka and then Ezra. Like, I don't think Ezra is going to be the lead there. So that's the way I'm looking at it. We get another one here from one of our patrons. This one's coming from Mike Waldron, a.k.a. Darth Hurricane, as we know him on the... in the base, I guess. In all forms of the base. The metaphorical base. All right. Since we typically see characters who leave the Empire for the Rebellion, will we ever see a significant spy or traitor going from the Rebels to the Empire? He says, will we see? I thought it was will we ever see? But will we see in Andor specifically a spy or traitor on the Rebellion's side moving into the Empire side? John, you get to go first on this one. What do you think?
I hope so. I think that'd be really interesting, because we do lean heavily on the other way around. So many people that we didn't even realize started, with the Empire and then turned to the Rebellion, which does make sense, defecting and that sort of thing. So I think it would be interesting to give us a little more of that on the flip side, and seeing, because it'd be an interesting thought, what would drive somebody to that point? Is it desperation? Is it security? Is it complacency? Are they forced into it? So I think that'd be an interesting thing to see. I don't know if I need it on a grand scale of we're doing a whole episode dedicated to this person, or whatever. But I think it'd be cool. I think it'd be cool to see.
Lacey?
All I can think about is DJ in The Last Jedi and how angry I was about that whole scenario. I think it's a cool idea coming from Mike. Thank you, Mike. I'm going to say no. I don't think we're going to see that.
I definitely don't think we're going to see it in Andor. But I'm even hesitant to say that we're going to ever see it. Period. My answer, my thought on this is that there's sort of a reason that we only ever see that side. And it's because the Empire is the status quo, and people just kind of go into that because that's the obvious route that everybody takes. And when they realize that it's bad, they defect. It's very rare that someone would say, like, be an American, start on the German side of the war, and then defect back to the Americans, kind of thing. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
No.
It doesn't to you, John?
No.
Because I see the rebels as the enemy to the world that you're born into. You're born into the world, and you're expected, if you're going to go in the military route, if you're expected to go into some sort of law enforcement
that doesn't mean
or
you're
anything.
Part of the Empire, though. You're under Empire rule. Doesn't mean you're a part of it. Doesn't mean you're a part of the military. I think he's asking somebody literally joining the ranks. You know.
Yeah, I don't feel like you join the Rebel Alliance as your first thing. I don't know. It seems strange to me. And then when you're joining, I feel like if you were joining, you would have to have some sort of awareness of the political landscape of things. So to then join and then be like, oh man, this rebellion, terrorism, whatever, is not what I thought it was. I want to go join the regular status quo military. I feel like it's a little backwards. I think people like to think of them as two sides often, but I mean, rebels are supposed to be like small pockets. And I feel like most people would probably just join the Empire first and then make a decision to defect, which is the very dangerous thing to do. All right, let's move on to the next one here. It's will the Star Wars movie that is set to release in December 19th of 2025 be written and directed by Taika Waititi? Lacey, do you think that A, will happen? And B, when that movie inevitably does happen, because it's on the schedule, do you think that's the Taika Waititi movie?
This question hurts a little bit because they sent out that updated schedule from Disney this past week, and it said 2025 and 2027, and it had all these other movies, and then I was like, this hurts. Seeing this hurts. That's what
inspired it.
I'm sure it is. It just, seeing this again, I'm going back to that feeling of the first time I read it being like, oh no. Yes, I think the 2025 movie is Taika's movie because that's the only one that we have actual active discussions that it's happening. That people are still locked in even discussing it.
Yeah.
Rogue One was canceled. Ryan's like, oh, sorry. Rogue Squadron was canceled. Rian Johnson was like,
what did Rogue One say that was so offensive?
Whatever. And then, yeah, I think Taika is the only one that's been actively like, oh yeah, I'm working on a story. I have a writer. We're working on the treatment. And he's a little weird that he might be further along than he says, but I guess we'll find out.
That's a good point. John, what do you think? Do you think it's the Taika movie, or do you think that Rogue Squadron will get back on track?
I don't know. I think Taika's out.
Really?
I hope I'm wrong. You know, I feel like there was a heavy mixed reaction to Love and Thunder.
Do you think it's Kevin Feige's movie then?
No, I don't know. I think
who knows if they put a date on the calendar.
Well, what I think, those dates have always sort of been there. It was 2023, 25,
they gave it
and
to
27.
Avatar, yeah.
And there was thought that it was supposed to be the Benioff and Weiss movies. It's supposed to be Rian Johnson, then one of the Benioff and Weiss, and then remember this whole thing, and then Rogue Squadron
they had
comes
one
out
every
of
year
nowhere.
at least, yeah.
Like those dates were set for movies before Rogue Squadron, and that's been canceled since.
Yeah.
That took the place of another thing that got canceled.
Oh my gosh.
It's like, and now Rogue One's must be tweeting things and getting itself canceled. I don't know what's going on.
I feel like that old lady. It's been 84 years.
Yeah.
Like going through all these announcements.
Yeah, her and the other lady are like, yeah, storm's coming, Annie. Like they're both just like having a rough time.
Annie.
But I hope I'm wrong. I'm just saying, like, and this is all based on that interview Kathleen Kennedy gave this right before Celebration, with Vanity Fair. Was that the one Bresnikan's with?
Yes. Yep.
And she said, like, we can't just have someone show up, make one movie, and bounce. And that's right now what Taika's thing was. And she said we need long-term commitments from people and stuff. I think they have washed that whole whiteboard and are rebooting the whole thing. And I'm hoping they've been working on it so that at Celebration they give us finally yes, Star Wars movies are coming back, and here's our actual plan now. We have a concrete plan. We have our Feige, so to speak, for the movies. And that's the only reason why I say that. I want to see a Taika Waititi Star Wars movie. But we haven't heard much from it lately. And those last things Taika said, I know I've said this a few times now, sounded very much like stuff Rian Johnson said when people have been asking him about his movies. I just think with what's been going on and her statements about
what is happening,
planning out the future of the movies, it just wouldn't make sense to like wipe all this other stuff clean and be like, but Taika, you can still make that one movie. I just don't know. For some reason, I just don't think that movie is going to be Taika Waititi's movie. I think it's going to be whatever that is. If it holds to 2025, they may just punt it all and say
that's the other.
Star Wars movies.
That's what I'm worried about.
We'll see you. That's why I tweeted like maybe just don't put them on the schedule. Like don't report things until you have something to report. Like the vice.
Because here's the thing: if we don't get some type of announcement next year in 2023, we're not getting a movie in 2025.
No, of course not.
The craziest thing with all of this to me is like we ask Lucasfilm to just tell us what you're doing, and when they don't, we get mad because they're not telling us what they're doing. But when they do tell us what they're doing, then they never follow through with any of it. So it's like, I guess I don't want them to tell us what they're doing until they know they're going to go through with something. But then you get back in that same mindset where you're like, what are you doing? Why can't you tell us what you're up to and what's going on behind the scenes? How hard is it to say, this is the director, this is the writer? And they would probably argue every time we do that, it falls through.
That movie, if it's coming out in December of 2025, would have to start filming in the early part of 2024.
That's what I'm saying. If they don't make an announcement or some type of update like this is starting next year, it's not happening.
If they don't announce anything for that movie at Celebration, which is their big shot to do it, I'd be shocked if they waited till like D23 or whatever and say like, hey, big news, in 4 months we're starting filming our next Star Wars movie.
Well, they still
want to build that juice.
They still have the 2024 Celebration theoretically,
if they're doing
in San Diego Comic-Con.
I hear you. I'm just saying, if they do, if they announce at 2023 there's going to be a 2024 and it's at Orlando or Anaheim or something like that, they could make that one the announcement for this movie that's going to be the 2025 movie.
Not for nothing, I want to keep this positive because I think the future of once they figure it out, I think there's going to be a really good feeling about the future of Star Wars movies once they finally figure out the plan. Instead of like putting band-aids on things. Once they finally like say like enough's enough, let's completely regroup. I think it's going to be a really positive and good for Star Wars. So let me just say that. The only other negative thing I have is if they're going to keep like saving all these announcements and stuff for these conventions that aren't Star Wars Celebration, they're going to have to really reevaluate the value of Celebration in terms of like big stuff beyond just be a hangout for Star Wars fans. So I mean, people traveling overseas to different countries to go be a part of something big, like those TFA trailer moments, or Mark Hamill walking out on stage with Harrison Ford and Carrie Fisher, or the reveal of, your new Han Solo. Those types of things, are really important for those fans that are in there. And those are memories kept for a long time. If they say like, well, we're going to announce this at San Diego, and D23 is going to get this Star Wars Celebration, you get to watch the first episode of our next animated series. And Indiana Jones. We'll talk about Indiana Jones at Star Wars Celebration. But anyway, I hope when we get, it'd be great if we got to Celebration. They're like, here, we were waiting to tell you all this. Here it is. Big news, the new trilogy or whatever. I'm not expecting that, but I have a feeling just maybe the Taika thing's not going to be this next movie, and they're really based on what Kathleen Kennedy herself said, they're regrouping. They're trying to find the person to put in the seat to really be the architect of the future. And then things are going to get really good from there. So I'm really hopeful. I think it's going to be awesome. But I think we're still in the weeds a little bit.
Does feel a little strange that it's taken Lucasfilm 13 years then at that point, 2025, to finally get their stride on like how they want to do this stuff. But one thing I wanted to add to that, John, like as my turn, is like I'm inclined to think that you are correct. The only thing that sort of does hang me up though is a little bit is that Taika Waititi did show up for Mandalorian and he played in that world and he then did the gallery afterwards. Like it wasn't like, well, it's everybody but Taika, you know, it's like he was there, he showed up, he played, and he at that moment said, I like this and I want to sign on.
Yeah.
And so I think like if there is something there that it's not just like a pipe dream, like, oh, wouldn't it be cool to do Star Wars? Like he did Star Wars. He tried it out. He liked it and then agreed that I down the line, I'm doing a movie. So I think there's something in his heart that says that's where I want to be. I do want to commit to that instead of just like, wouldn't it be cool if I did a Star Wars? They're offering it to me. Yeah, I'm going to take it. I can change my mind later. After seeing fans or whatever, like he already got that treatment and liked it, so he might be.
I hope I'm wrong.
He might stick to it. That is going to end Will of the Force though this week, and we are going to head into the discussion.
Obi-Wan once thought as you do.
All right, yeah. So so this is going to be a pretty positive discussion here. We're going to be ranking our Disney Star Wars live-action movies and series. And what we did is we each gave our rankings, and then we tabulated, the point structure and put together our averages. So this is our combined list of 1 through 8. Andor, we agreed to leave off because it's not done yet, so it is not fair to include it yet. So we're doing all the movies that came out in the last 10 years under Disney's Lucasfilm and the live action series. And I just figured if we had added the animated series, then we're talking about 11, 12. I just figured we can tackle the animated later. Right now, sticking to the live action. So what we're going to do is go from our 8th to 1st. And for each one, we're going to spend a couple of minutes just talking about things we love about that particular series or movie. Just from the perspective of looking for the things that make us feel good about all these things, whether it's our least favorite or favorite. And if we talk about what came in at number 8, maybe it was number 5 on my list, stuff like that. But it's really just taking a look at this and then also shining some love to aspects of these things, whether they're our favorite or not. So, and people love lists. People always have a good time talking about lists. So the first one coming in at number 8, the Book of Boba Fett. So I think that was collectively towards the bottom of all of our lists, obviously being the overall last here. But James, things that stand out from you from the Book of Boba Fett that you love or that you look back on fondly, favorite episode, favorite moment, anything from that series that you enjoy?
I mean, obviously I want to say the way it all ended, I feel like the climactic showing up of all the characters and being together as a team had the same vibe that Mandalorian did. The one thing that really stuck out to me is like a thing, because I'll say right now, this is our first little difference here, is I actually put Obi-Wan below, and I put Book of Boba Fett as my number 7. The difference there is there were parts of the Book of Boba Fett that I remember we were doing Mando Fan Show and me going like, I can't believe this is happening. Like, what do you want if you don't want Black Chrysanthemum and these huts and Boba Fett and Fennec Shan and a Rancor? They're all standing there having this conversation. If you don't want that, I don't know what you want, And it was so cool to see all that in live action. There it is. It's real life. I can't believe they went there. They're doing it. And then, like I said, to have all those characters come together, and you have, Cobb Vanth and like the Mandalorian himself and Baby Yoda
That show
and
was
Pelimato.
loaded with
It's like
characters.
I actually
Yeah.
think I put this backwards. I did this very early on, quickly during the day. I think I'm with James. I think Obi-Wan's my bottom, and Book of Boba Fett's above that one.
Interesting.
Yeah.
All right.
So that being said, though, those were standout points to me. But there is still a reason it was at the bottom. I definitely spent like the first 2 episodes kind of like, okay, we're kind of chugging along here. There was production issues at times, and I wasn't sure like this was the story people wanted out of Boba Fett. I felt like there was kind of conflict there. Like some people who really knew him liked that we were getting the even deeper story, and the people who just wanted the bounty hunter guy was like, I don't know why we're spending so much time with him out of the suit in the sand digging holes. Like what's going on here? I think that there seems to be a group tendency to not like Book of Boba Fett.
Yeah, I really like Book of Boba Fett. I think the huts and the scene where he blows up the Sarlacc pit was amazing.
Oh gosh.
The Rancor is just crazy. And all the scenes with Grogu, that episode with Mando is like one of the best episodes, even though it's not Mandalorian of Star Wars live action. I really did love Book of Boba Fett, and I know people had their critiques about it, but I liked it more than Obi-Wan. And the reason I did, which is surprising for me to say, guys, this takes a lot for me to say, because I was one of the biggest people that's like, Obi-Wan's going to be amazing. I cried when Ewan said yes to being able to do it. I was totally on board. I felt that while Kenobi was amazing, I think he did a great job. I think Vivian Lyra Blair was amazing as Leia. I thought the story was pretty good. I fall back, and I don't know if James feels the same way. When I look at scenes and moments from that show, it feels like a room. Like it feels like one room that they just shot this whole show in. And I know that's not the case, but it just felt very small for such an epic story. Whereas I feel like Book of Boba Fett did more with his character than they did with Obi-Wan.
Yeah, I had Boba Fett as my last, and I'm holding it there, but there are so many things I miss about it and may want to go revisit. Like I wasn't the biggest Clone Wars fan. I'm still not really. I think a lot of it's a little too hokey and too segmented and sometimes too expansive with characters that really aren't that important to me. But the Cad Bane live action stuff was just otherworldly awesome. I thought they nailed the physical manifestation of that, the animatronics and the person in the suit, like every aspect of it, and then the voice. They could have really botched the mix on that. I think they did a good job with that.
Cad Bane was really cool.
And
it's like people
just,
forget
like,
about that.
like
They think about Book of Boba Fett as something else, and then you're like, you didn't like Cad Bane showing up? They're like, oh shoot, I forgot that happened.
Yeah, and
there was a lot in that show.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then that moment towards the end that I was sort of waiting for, and one of the reasons why is towards the bottom is, Boba Fett really wasn't Boba Fett in this series. And then towards the end, when he's having that fight with Cad Bane, and you're like, he's pulling the old Boba Fett out of him right now by what he's facing down with, and that duel and everything like that, and that last episode, which was a lot of people's least favorite, I loved so much. And seeing Grogu's growth, the Luke stuff, like Ahsoka's in there, like the Book of Boba Fett was absolutely stacked with actor appearances and cameos, characters, and but it all, I felt, was good. I don't think it was, people like to toss out fan service and nostalgia out there and stuff. And I know, Lucasfilm's very precious about preserving the suspension of disbelief with the continuity of how a character looks. So they didn't recast Mark Hamill. And I actually prefer that. But I really had a great time. I'm going to revisit parts of Book of Boba Fett. So even though it's at the bottom of my list, just like, Attack of the Clones is my least favorite Star Wars movie, I still love it. There's a lot of aspects of those things I really enjoy. So moving on to what we already just talked about, number 7 on our list is Obi-Wan Kenobi. If I looked at this list 5 months ago, I would be devastated. I'd be like, oh my God, Obi-Wan is 7th?
Yeah.
Oh no.
And if, in truth be told, if Lacey does flip, then that would flip these two. So based on what she said earlier, it would be 7th, but based on what she's saying now, it would actually be 8th. So it's like, it's down there.
It's down there. But in terms of things I loved, they did Vader to perfection.
Yes,
in this series.
they did.
I honestly I don't know, even if I super hyped up in my mind Vader being in this series,
It hit every note that they said it was going to be. Yeah, with Hayden, with the actors, yes.
How they did the re-speecher with James Earl Jones's voice that he signed off on, Vader sounded strong. It sounded good.
Yeah.
And yes, there's issues with the production. Clearly, the volume was visible and felt claustrophobic in a lot of these scenes. But because of the story it is, which is really just the story of these two, the fateful reunion of Anakin and Obi-Wan, I don't mind it being that sort of intimate feeling.
Mm-hmm.
And I was able to look past that because I thought Ewan did such a great job. I thought it was maybe his best version of Obi-Wan. And him and Vader, and as it kept going, the series kept getting better.
Mm-hmm.
Like you said, Lacey, I liked young Leia. How can you get a better Brew and Owen Lars casting besides bringing those two back, Joel Edgerton and Bonnie Peace, and Reva. I don't know if that was the changes they made and stuff with if that worked, but overall, to cap it off with that final episode that I believe I gave it 10. That final duel between them, and the music that Natalie Holt brought, and using the John Williams stuff towards the end there with his approval, that is some great Star Wars. That final duel between the two of them, and the broken heartedness of Obi-Wan, and then you get the cherry on the sundae, finally getting the payoff with Qui-Gon at the end, which was done nicely. I think they didn't overdo it.
Wait, he's in that? Liam Neeson's in that? He said he wasn't.
It's just some people they're just born liars. Liam Neeson's one of them. But I think what I love about Obi-Wan is it went out strong. It may not have been the best, but it kept getting better. So my lasting impression of it and how it ended, I think they're probably going to make some more, it looks like. I thought was really nicely done. They stuck the landing, I think is the biggest thing for me.
Yeah. That was sort of my criticism of it too. Like in the beginning, is that I said, look, the show really only has to end well, like, because the beginning of the show, everybody kind of forgives that. They're like, well, that's not Obi-Wan, and I think one of my big takeaways from the show was just the big switcheroo that they gave us, where we all thought the show was going to be about Obi-Wan and Luke, and it ended up being about Obi-Wan and Leia. And I and maybe it's because it was there at Celebration, but I remember being in that room, and I'm standing there, and everybody's like, what? This is incredible. Like, we did not expect to see Alderaan. We did not expect to see Leia.
Right.
And having that be the main thing, I think, was really cool and really special. I think Lacey's points are right about the feeling claustrophobic, and obviously the whole way through it, I felt like, I was saying things about the special effects and stuff. I'm still a little bit in that sidestep of did we need that story? I think it's cool to have it, but I was fine with Ben just being in the desert the whole time, and okay, it's a good opportunity to bring Ian back. Let's do it. We'll make something. But it's hard to say how much better the story is now. It is better. I think it is better, but it's hard to say that. I don't think it totally made it way better. And the very
But it's cool that you took because you went, I mean, everyone knows who listens, you went into this saying I'm not excited about Kenobi. I don't think we need this at all. I think it's forced and blah, blah, blah. And the fact that you were able to take something out of it
Oh, absolutely.
That improve the stories.
There's so much stuff in it that was that was good, and I'm happy that it exists. I love the episode where they're fighting, doing the flashback thing and how that all plays out. That's great stuff. The one thing though that really was man, that was the perfect thing for me to say they really stuck the landing, was that final fight echoed too much to me of Rebels. And that was the one thing that I was like, if this was this crazy, incredible fight, which it was for most people, but to the people who had seen Rebels or who were familiar with Rebels, to me, it was like, this is a repeat of a story that we already got. It's a great story. It's great how it plays out, but it feels borrowed and not original to Obi-Wan. So as much as I liked the ending of it, there was a little bit of that as well.
I know. So, Lacey, you had this at your bottom on the re-edit of your list.
Sorry, it wasn't a re-edit. I was just moving quickly. And then when James started talking about it, I was like, oh, I had that wrong. So I apologize. But
okay.
It's just weird for me, like I said earlier, because it's definitely the show that I was like, oh, this is going to be so epic. And then looking back on it, I think a part of it, honestly, is because you guys saw the premiere in a room full of people. I did not.
Sure.
I watched it by myself in a hotel room at 6 a.m. the next day.
You were definitely rockier on those first episodes than we were.
Right, because I saw it by myself, and I know that feeds into the experience. Mm-hmm. A lot of my experiences with TFA are locked into those nostalgic, I was in the room for this, I was in a movie theater for this. It's just a different experience. So I think that's playing into this a little bit, if I'm honest. But that being said, I found that, kind of going off what you said, James, the question is, at the end of the day, did we need this story? Did this story change your perspective of Obi-Wan Kenobi, of Darth Vader, of the original trilogy, of everything that you know about those characters? Or if you never saw this series, would you be missing anything? And I think that's a kind of a challenging question I've been asking myself, because I think I would always be the person that would say, yes, of course. But when I'm looking back on it, I'm like, you know what? I would miss Tala. I'd miss little Leia. I'd miss seeing the different planets. But I don't know if I would miss Obi-Wan and Vader's confrontations or miss their situations that they're in and the tension between them. I think there's a lot of beats where it's like, oh, that's really cool. Like, Obi-Wan Kenobi at the Inquisitorious place where he's throwing water out the window and like throwing it at stormtroopers. Like, that's a very fun moment. And he does like the twirl where you're like, he did it. He did the thing. And then the big fight at the end where he fights with Vader and has that really emotional moment, and the callback with Luke. I think there are moments where you're like, that is so wonderful and gifable and great, and it's what I wanted as a fan. But if we're looking at it as a list from 1 to 8 of something that stays with me, that has impacted my viewing experience as a fan and overall fandom, I don't think Kenobi did that for me. I don't think it had that impact. But I think Ewan McGregor is fabulous. I think he can play Obi-Wan Kenobi for as long as he wants, and I'm always going to watch it. Do I need another season? I don't know. But that's why it kind of hits that bottom of the list for me. Mm-hmm. But like I said, there are just so many wonderful moments in this series that just add to the weight and emotional impact of the Vader Kenobi friendship, brotherhood, relationship. Just like their interactions within the prequels, within books and comics and much more, of just like how, and the Clone Wars too, how painful it was for everything that transpired after he turned to Darth Vader.
If I could speak for you, Lacey, I think one you might be missing that I think you'll like is the relationship between Kenobi and Leia, like how that ended.
Yes. Yep. I was getting there. Yep. Mm-hmm. So that that bit I think is my favorite part, because with A New Hope, us as fans were always just like, how did this happen? How does she not know who he is? Like, if this is going to work, how are they going to make it work? And the fact that he was like, you can never let anybody know that we know each other. And then she gets this kind of glimpse of her parents through him. And he gets the understanding that at the end of the day, he made the right choices for their children as Padme and Anakin's children. And then he did get to protect them. It's really awesome. And now that everybody can pull that glance that he gives them in A New Hope where Leia and Luke are together again, it like obviously adds a little bit more there. But yeah, no, I think it's a great series. I think Deborah Chow did an amazing job. Ewan did a great job. I fall back on that production stuff, but it's Star Wars. It's still awesome. And
the show didn't
looks
fail.
great.
It's just our least favorite.
Right.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Our second to least favorite.
Yeah, least favorite, second to least favorite.
I think it's funny because Lacey, you said like you like all the other stuff, but maybe not so much the Obi-Wan Vader stuff, and that the Obi-Wan Vader stuff is the only thing I'm cool with taking and leaving all the other stuff behind. Like,
I didn't say I didn't like it.
Well,
I just said
think
I didn't
you were saying-
necessarily need it. Like,
Yeah,
if you were
yeah.
looking at the way, and this is probably the wrong way to look at it, if you look at the list and you go, hey, you got to get rid of one, I think that story would
you
not.
hate that so much.
It's not hate. It's not hate. It's just like, you know, it's you're ranking it, and that's how I rank it.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. I actually, this is like a sizzling take, but I think the Leia and Obi-Wan thing is troublesome, but they made it work. But I know why they
Is that
had
why
to
you
do
made
it,
a
'cause-
face when I said that?
No, I was just no. I came to the realization myself. It didn't have to do with what you were saying. I didn't want you to take it that way, but it was like,
It's funny.
They-
Go back and
they're
watch.
like,
John makes a face. He's like,
well, they need to tell the story, and they knew they couldn't get Luke off the planet. So what's going to make him leave? And the only thing is Leia. And it's like, so basically, they made this because they wanted to make this series. So the story came after the desire to make the series. And that sometimes is a little troublesome to me, but they made it work, and I really
or
enjoyed
it was a
So
different story, and they needed to fix it.
they need to get him off world, yeah.
Mhm.
All right, so next up on our list, number 6 is The Last Jedi. And again, you know, we're trying to just really focus on the things we enjoyed from all this stuff. I know we're going to bring up things that we have issues with, but to keep it positive, on The Last Jedi, you know, number 6 on our list. Lacey, your thoughts on The Last Jedi on our list right now?
I'm confused how this is working. Did you average these out?
Yep.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Got it. So confused.
Lacey was busy when we were coming up with everything, so she's like, I'll send over my list.
Yeah. No, it makes sense. I was just like looking at mine and then the guys next to mine. I'm like, wait, how did we get here? Because it's really funny. If you look at all our lists, we're like 1 or 2 away on each kind of ranking. So like when you guys said this, I was like, oh, this is weird.
So the audience knows, basically the lowest score gets the higher spot on the list.
No,
so,
it totally makes sense.
Yeah.
It makes sense. Last Jedi. The thing I love about The Last Jedi is the Rey and Kylo relationship, and I think Rian Johnson did an amazing job building out the character of Kylo Ren and Ben Solo. I think that movie alone made me love Kylo Ren and Ben Solo in a way that I left TFA hating him. Like, I absolutely was like, he's the worst person ever. He killed Han Solo. And Rian Johnson took that character as someone that I was like, he's the worst, to being like, wow, I love him. He's amazing. He's been through so much. Nobody understands him, which is his job as a writer and director, to make you feel differently, which he had always said was the goal of this movie, is to go in. He has Luke Skywalker say it, like, it's not going to go the way you think. And I got to tell you, if that was his mission, you did it, Rian Johnson, because I went in that movie expecting something completely different and left shocked at some things, but overall really, really interested on how they took things and where they went. I loved just kind of how Rey and Kylo with the force bonding stuff was just so new and unique. and the force projection with Luke Skywalker was just like over the top awesome. I loved the Princess Leia moments, General Organa. I thought Carrie Fisher did an amazing job, and there were just so many things in this movie that were just out of the box, that were just not what you'd expect, from flashbacks, which nobody had ever seen before, to kind of darker moments for hero characters, which we didn't expect. The whole lack of sound moment was, the Holdo maneuver was insane. And I remember people gasping in the movie theater. And I can't talk about this movie without mentioning it. The throne room scene with Kylo and Rey is one of the best kind of long shot sequences of choreographed fighting, and the Snoke killing had me cheering every time, and it still does. The moment when Ben Solo makes that turn is just so awesome. And I think that moment being so awesome then drives me into certain emotions for the Rise of Skywalker. We'll get to that eventually. But this movie was very, very cool. I really liked it.
I'll say this about The Last Jedi. I walked out of the movie and I was looking around to my friends and I said, was that the best Star Wars movie that's ever been made? And as we all know, the general fandom, that was all divided. And when I remember watching the movie, and every time I revisit a scene of the movie, I think, man, that movie was so good. But I do think the thing that holds me back on Last Jedi sometimes is something about like the pacing or the length or something, because I feel like if you cut out each and every scene, I love each and every scene, but when you put them all together, I don't feel like getting into that. Something about like, it's not a very go back to and have fun and rewatch that movie. It is just part of the story, and it is an interesting part of the story. And the interesting thing for me too is that, it was obviously very controversial. I walked out of the movie feeling one way, and as you revisit the movie and you have the conversations with other fans, there are times when people point out, you liked that? That didn't make any sense because this and this and this. And you go, oh yeah, that didn't make any sense. But then things you didn't get, they will say, oh, I love that because it was like this. And you're like, I didn't even think of that. Whoa, that's crazy. That movie to me is very contrasted.
A lot of discussions.
The worst, the parts I didn't like about it, let's say, like got worse the longer the conversation went, and the parts I did like about it or whatever got better as the longer I went on in the conversation. And it's very flat because of that. Like I say, it's contrasted, but in that case, it's like I don't know how I feel about it because it's kind of a mix. And what I did like about it when it was The Last Jedi changed when The Rise of Skywalker came out, because you would think maybe that would mean you'd not like where Rise of Skywalker went, but it sort of did this weird opposite effect where I'm like, oh, well, now that I know Rise of Skywalker exists and know how that plays out, it kind of makes me go back on Last Jedi and think about that one differently. So I think that's kind of where it is right now. It just because it sort of fell into that like middle space that is very contrasted for me.
Yeah, The Last Jedi, I think I have the most difficult relationship with The Last Jedi just because, I feel like fans online have distanced me from that movie just because I don't want to be connected to discourse that happens over that movie. Like, I've muted the title of that movie from like my social media. I don't want to see people talking about The Last Jedi. Whether it's good or bad, I just don't want to see it because it always leads to a grenade. And so I've been slowly easing myself back to have my own one-on-one relationship with that movie, where there's other movies and Star Wars stuff where I'm like, this feels like I can jump in the pool and really have fun with everybody talking about this. But TLJ I have a really tough relationship with, and it's, I think I had it 5th on my list out of the 8. So just above where we have it. But there are a lot of that I really do like. I think, and I said this when it came out, and Lacey sometimes pokes fun at me when I bring this stuff up, but this was the first premiere I got to go to, and I say that because my experience with it, when I walked out, I got to leave The Last Jedi before anyone got to say anything about that movie, and that is like a really special thing. And the same for Rise of Skywalker. And when I left the theater for both of those, you're looking around, there's people there who you're like, I shouldn't be here, and you're kind of overwhelmed and nervous, and I'm by myself, and I'm getting my phone back and stuff. I'm like, what am I going to tweet? I can't spoil it. I'm like frazzled, but I remember thinking like, that was like a really good movie. Like that was not even a Star Wars movie. That was a really good movie. I remember when the credits came up, just being like, I didn't want it to be over yet. I wanted to see I wanted the Falcon to go somewhere else, and then let's see what else happens. And that's always a good thing. The Luke stuff I think is going to age really well, as opposed to if he just showed up in his tunic and his green lightsaber and beat everybody up and stood on top of the mountain. I do think I understand the issues with it, but I think that eventually is going to age pretty well in terms of what he did, and as they expand upon what Jedi are capable of, and seeing his true power and what he was able to do. And then the Kylo Ren stuff, I agree. I thought Adam Driver was so good in this movie.
Oh, so good.
I think the centerpiece of Luke, Kylo, and Rey did hurt Finn and Poe a bit, because they got backseated. Especially Poe really got just relegated to just being sort of on the ship the whole movie. But I'm approaching this list by trying to focus on the things I like from these movies the most. Gorgeously shot movie by Rian Johnson. He put his all into it. Director in The Jedi proves that. Whether you like the movie or not, the guy gave it everything he had. Knowing that, Carrie Fisher, it's her last bow, actually filming stuff for it. That shot of her with just her eyes at the Great Base, knowing that they were involved at that base early on in the rebellion, and that was her as an actress's last spot, so to speak. A lot of good things there. Could I have used more R2-D2 and 3PO together? Sure. And the Snoke scene and the whole, let the past die, let old things die, join me. That whole conflict between Rey and Kylo Ren, I thought was huge. Like the way that shot just felt so big, seeing that in the theater, and the little lightsaber just in the middle as they're both trying to use the Force to grab it. Just all aspects of that, the Holdo maneuver, just a lot of cool stuff to go back and revisit in that movie.
Oh my God. Imagine if we did a Kessel run of like the top 4 things we would change in the sequel trilogy.
Cool. I mean, that's something we could do. Yeah. But the one thing that just came to my mind, and I remember seeing that made me realize this is going to be a different type of Star Wars movie, is when Leia's looking at the chart of all the rebel ship or resistance ships that they had at the beginning, and you see them all X'd out, and it just feels like doom in a way that you never really saw in a Star Wars movie. Even Empire, which is the dark one out of the original trilogy, a lot of those guys got out of that Battle of Hoth, and you didn't see like, wow, like we just lost like 80% of that fleet that just went.
You want to know
that dreadnought.
When I knew it was a different movie? You want to take a guess?
Oh.
The moment I went, oh no.
Oh, Akbar?
Nope.
Oh.
Luke Skywalker threw the lightsaber.
Oh, yeah.
When he threw the lightsaber, I went, oh no.
Yeah. Yeah, but
because I knew it wasn't going to be what I expected. It was not going to be the Luke that I wanted to see, and I'm not saying that that's the correct choice. I'm just saying I knew in that moment that I was like, people are laughing at the first interaction of Luke and Rey. This is not going to go well for me.
Yeah, and it's not a movie I'm always going to reach for to put on because it's so heavy. And
by the way, Mark Hamill's amazing in this film. He should have, been nominated for the Oscar or some award or something. Even though I don't agree with the choices that were made, he killed it.
Yeah. It's not always going to find it, in my DVD player, or I'm not going to always click on it to pop it on, but I'm glad it exists, and that it's, we could say it's like on our team, like it's part of our team. So, and then to move on, anything else on TLJ? we move on?
No, I think it's a good segue to the next one, though.
Yeah, the next one is the next in line in terms of the movie. So The Rise of Skywalker comes in at number 5. And I think this is the one, I mean, this and Rogue One was the most scattered on our lists. I think I had it the highest at 4. James, you had it at 5. And Lacey had it at 6.
So I was going to say that I don't think it's this one. We'll get to the other one that is actually the most controversial between us. But
yeah,
to kick off Rise of Skywalker.
Yeah, why don't you kick off with Rise of Skywalker? Yeah.
I think I hinted at it a little bit earlier when I was talking about The Last Jedi. Like, I really liked the way The Last Jedi went, and I think for a lot of people what happened there was that they liked 8 so much that when 9 came out, 9 sort of ruined the trajectory of 8. And I think I had a sort of opposite view of that. I think that 9 was the movie that I sort of connected with better in a way, and sort of was like, that means that 8 was actually the mistake. You know what I mean? Like, instead of like, oh, 9 messed everything up, it's more like, now that I see 9, 8 sort of messed everything up. You know? Like,
well, we talked about that on our episode about the lessons learned.
Yes,
yeah.
Making, yeah. I think like the thing is like when I'm looking at, Force Awakens and The Last Jedi, and then this one, and 2, the beginning and the end were both done by JJ. I think of the trilogy as 7 and 9, and then there's an 8 wedged in there. So I think the positive vibes of the trilogy, the sequel trilogy as a whole, start and end with, that theme or that vibe, the tone coming out of those movies. And I liked those. But I will say, The Rise of Skywalker, not perfect. I mean, I think probably the biggest thing to me is the Palpatine thing. And I still am like, man, that's really good. I wish they would have thought of that earlier and just seeded that idea through the whole thing, because then The Rise of Skywalker would have landed so much better. That to me is like the big holdout on why it isn't higher. But I do think
you had said once that they should have revealed that at the end of The Last Jedi.
Or Force Awakens even.
I think when Snoke got killed or something, you had said something like that would have been the moment.
I mean, in the novelization, there's the whole, like, the voice that talks to Rey when she's fighting Kylo on Starkiller, and people are like looking back on it, and they're like, oh, they could have been Palpatine, and they could have played in that world. And I think that's sort of like where I was thinking, like, whether it's The Last Jedi or the Force Awakens, like, if there was some sort of, we're headed the direction of Palpatine and he will return and it's going to be crazy, I think people would have been more open to that idea. But after The Last Jedi, it was sort of closed off by a lot of those fans who were thinking it was just going to go in this other direction now that Rian Johnson took a hard step to the left or the right, or whatever way you want to look at it, a different direction. So that's Rise of Skywalker for me. I feel like I think of it in good terms when I think of the sequel trilogy. I like the sequel trilogy, 7 and 9, and then you sort of have that 8 wedged in there, so I moved 8 a little bit down on that list. But again, I like the Rise of Skywalker for sure.
Yeah. Lacey?
So I was the one of the three of us that ranked this the lowest on my list. But what I do like about it is I liked that we got to see Poe and Finn together at the beginning of the movie, and they were like off on their mission. I loved seeing Poe, Finn, and Rey together. We finally got to see the trio like off on adventures and trying to figure out what's going on. I really liked that we got to see the Knights of Ren, even though for a quick moment, really. Mm-hmm. I found the whole Ochi of Bastoon thing interesting, but I think the part that I like the most of that whole sequence is the quicksand. Like, I loved how they did that stunt. I liked what it turned into with them falling underneath. I thought some of the funniest moments were when they were in the caves and stuff.
Yeah.
The lore of Rey healing, like, and how that ties in with the dyads and the other stuff and all that. It's like, whoa, this is crazy. Like, what's going on
Super
here?
cool. And I think my two favorite moments in the movie is Rey jumping the TIE fighter, or a TIE whisper, which that in the trailer still is one of the most epic moments in a Star Wars trailer. Like, the moment she did that, everyone in the theater went, oh my God. Like, just
Me
so
and John
cool.
actually, you too are forever on YouTube with that exact moment.
And then I think my overall favorite moment is when Ben Solo turns to the light and then they transfer the lightsaber and he fights the Knights of Ren.
Oh, yeah.
And then him and Rey team up. Now, obviously, I wished for a different outcome, as many people did, but that moment alone was just really, really awesome.
Yeah, I mean, I think I like this movie the best out of the three of us. I was longing for the three main characters to be together for a while, and I thought, I was bummed that we didn't really get that till this movie. But the whole found family thing as the main theme for this movie, I thought is very powerful, because friendships mean a great deal to me. I consider friends family, and I like the fact that Rey sort of did find her family after just being on her own and her family getting killed when she was a kid. I thought that was powerful that she was able to be embraced that way and become, the Jedi she's supposed to be. How people gloss over this because it was done so well. The fact that Leia is in this movie via Carrie Fisher, and arguably, in my opinion, had her biggest impact on a single movie out of these three movies in this movie.
You think people gloss over that? I don't think people gloss over that.
They don't talk about it that it was done the way it was done. They talk about it as though she was in the movie, is what I'm saying. Like, it was done so well, they gloss over how difficult it was to bring her back in a movie, a dead person, using old footage, because it was done so well.
I will say that I talked to someone recently, and they saw the originals a long time ago, but they never got into Star Wars, and they started watching all the movies. They went through all of them, and they did make a comment about how this was Carrie Fisher's last movie, and I was like, well, she didn't do anything with it. And they were like, oh, I thought she died before it came out, but not. And I was like, no, she died before The Last Jedi came out.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of those things where it's almost like they did such a good job doing it that it's almost, for anybody that doesn't know, they're like, oh, she died. She must have done some of these scenes. They must have wanted to do more with her in this movie. I think I heard that, but they couldn't because, she had passed. And it's like, no, man, she wasn't even involved at all.
No, and
overlooked a little. I understand, John.
It's crazy, and her daughter was a stand-in for her in scenes, and I thought just how JJ handled it was, you couldn't do it better. And the Death Star duel was one of the most epic things I've ever seen. It might be one of my favorite lightsaber duels because it has that rawness to it that she's like clamping her hand, and it feels like people are actually fighting. The Han and Ben moment, I still get emotional thinking about that, a father's relationship with his son and forgiving him, but it's through his own memory of him. The Luke stuff, whatever. I'm glad Mark Hamill was able to come back one more time.
Luke.
And the Palpatine thing, I think, could have been better, of course, without a doubt. But and then the music, the friendship theme that gets woven in throughout it.
John Williams.
Babu Frick's great. Yeah, John Williams, he brought it for the final one.
No, he's in it.
Oh yeah, as the DJ, yeah. But
Babu Frick's my favorite part of Rise of Skywalker.
Yeah,
is he really?
Babu
I love
and
Babu
Zori.
Frick.
I really like Zori, but
Zori's
I
great.
do wish she was almost more involved.
Me
I
too.
wish she, instead of them leaving the planet and leaving her behind and then her just showing up, I wish she just would have gone with them or something,
Yeah.
But
Join
whatever.
the gang, yeah.
Yeah.
I thought, a lot of the big segments in this movie were as big as they get. The Exegol battle was really cool. I thought Kylo Ren was cool early on in the movie, and what they did with him later on, and the sort of redemption and Leia's sacrifice to bring him back, and that moment where she calls out to him, all that stuff. And I think what made me realize why I like this movie more than maybe the average Star Wars fan is I realize it's really like an Indiana Jones movie.
Mm-hmm.
There's a heavy MacGuffin involved. They're going on these adventures from place to place. There's a lot of that old school sort of action in it, like when they're on the chase through the desert. Feels like a very Indiana Jones truck chase to me. So I look at this movie, when I look at this movie through the lens of like an Indiana Jones movie, I like it even more. So I understand why people have their issues with it, no doubt. But for some reason, this movie landed with me. It's so funny when Lacey and I walked out of the premiere, I was like, thank God people aren't going to argue about this. And we get to like the after party, and one critic goes up to me and he's like,
I literally said,
"You
I
like
don't
that piece of crap?" I was like, "Oh no!"
you said that, and I looked at you and I said, "Are you sure about that?"
It-
And the
I know.
whole time
John
I
has
was
a good
getting
history.
messages. I would have to say, when I walked out of that movie, I had at least 30 Twitter messages saying, "Is it true? Does Ben Solo die?"
Oh, then not my experience at all. So I'm glad that I didn't do that.
I wanted to point out too, just for fun, is I'll never forget me and John having a conversation about The Last Jedi right after we got out of the theater. And John goes, "I'm just glad that all that Reylo stuff is done. That's over. That's never coming back." And it was like the catapult for it.
I feel like people.
It was
I was one
so
of them
much
that was more
crazier
into
after
it.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The shirt
Yeah.
off is what kind of was like. You were like, "Oh,
Well, she did the Godfather thing where she shut the door on him. You know?
Yeah.
All right. So moving on, number 4 on our list is Rogue One.
And this is our most controversial because our rankings.
Well, and let's be clear, we love all these movies.
No.
In varying respects.
but
we're
it's nice
Star
to know
Wars
our
fans,
preferences."
but-
I think people
Yeah.
ask us a lot what our preferences are.
Because I looked at our list and I was like, oh man, like me and John are pretty similar at the top. Me and Lacey are more similar down at the bottom. That's interesting. But like across the board,
Well-
Rogue One was like, it was John, your number 6, Lacey's number 4, and my number 1. So it's like almost barring the whole.
You go last on Rogue One because I
don't think I'm going to say a whole lot about it, honestly, because I think everybody on the podcast already knows the reasons why I love Rogue One.
Yeah. I love Rogue One too, and there's so much about it I appreciate, and sometimes when I think about making these lists, I think about doing the podcast as those movies were being built up to. And I remember us talking about, oh my God, they got a new composer, Michael Giacchino's coming in. He only has 3 months or whatever. And then you listen to that score and he just hit a home run with it. I think the score is honestly one of the stronger points that really lifted that movie. I love Felicity Jones. I thought she was great as Jyn Erso. Really the whole cast I thought brought it for Rogue One. And I think the biggest strength for that movie, and you guys know me, characters are first for me over plot. We know what the plot of this movie is. It's the crawl from A New Hope. But they sold us on these characters, and in one movie, they were able to make me care about all of them. Because by the end, as they were all getting picked off, I felt it. Whereas, in some movies, if you meet a character for the first time in that movie and they get killed, there's a lot of times I don't even remember the character's name. And in Rogue One, they did an excellent job of making you care about these characters, go on this whole arc with them, and then watch their sacrificial demise, which you sort of know is coming in the back of your mind because you're like, where would they have been then? And they do it in 2 hours and 14 minutes or whatever it is, and that's just a massive achievement when you think of what the type of time they're using to build characters in the series prequel to this, Cassian Andor. We're looking at 14 hours probably by the end of this thing. What they were able to do in Rogue One was incredible in terms of the characters, and I think it only helps the story of Star Wars because you can really watch this right into A New Hope, and it is pretty awesome.
Yeah,
Lacey, why don't you go?
For me, there's 2 things that kind of set Rogue One apart from other Star Wars movies. I think one is the locations. Like the places they shot this movie are stunning. Iceland and everywhere else, just they look otherworldly, and the budget is there. Like you can see where these big budget Star Wars movies at the beginning of the Disney Lucasfilm push for these movies once a year, they went nuts with this one. and I loved everything about it. I thought the characters were great. K2SO is like my favorite character in Rogue One. I love everything about him. I thought Alan Tudyk was perfect. Rogue One is just great. Like you said, John, Felicity Jones was great. There's just so many memorable lines and moments. And compared to what I said about the Obi-Wan Kenobi series, this one has changed how I view A New Hope. It has changed how I view future things.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
Whereas I feel like Kenobi, yes, obviously there's moments that I'm going to be like, yes, they talked about this in Kenobi, but not the way that I think this one impacted me. And I believe Rogue One has the best space battle of all Star Wars movies.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
James, why don't you take Rogue One home with some of the things that really... Why is it...
Yeah.
What took it to number one for you?
I mean, I think part of this discussion is interesting because it's fun to kind of... We all know we liked The Last Jedi. But like, what are the parts that held it back, you know? And to me, I think this is the least interesting for me to talk about it because it's my number one. I don't have anything interesting to say about it. It's just best. It fires on all cylinders for me. Every part about it is perfect, from the actors to the music to the scene to the scenes and the pacing and everything about it. I think, like, you know, the I don't know why I'm going to this first, but like the scene of Jyn watching the hologram of her father, and they're playing that music, and you know, if you're picturing a piano, they're up here, they're bling hitting these notes up here real high, and they're hitting that, and then like you get to that moment where, you know, she's emotionally upset and all this and stuff, and GH goes to this side, boom, and he hits that. You know, as soon as that Death Star hits, he goes down to the lowest note on the piano, and he just holds that, and it's just like. The expansiveness of Star Wars in this movie is just so exciting to me that even when I'm watching, you know, the sequel trilogy, and you're thinking, oh man, you know, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, that was great, and that's going to be huge. Can Star Wars carry on forever? Is it possible? I watched 7, 8, and 9, and I see it. Yes, they could always carry it on, but there's always this like misstep of the possibility that they could just that legacy of 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, it could wear itself out. Rogue One is the movie and the inspiration for me that says, no matter what, we can always introduce you to new characters in this world, and it will be successful over here, over here, over here, over here. And I know there's connections to the original trilogy, but to me, that feels very much like it only has connections to Star Wars, right? Because it is in the Star Wars world. But what is interesting to me is the characters, is the music, is the location, is the world that they're in. And again, I said it at the beginning, I'll say it again. Fires on all cylinders for me. It's my number one.
And also, we didn't even bring it up. You know, the Vader scene, like, people take it as, oh
yes.
surface.
Oh my God, I forgot about that.
It not only is it awesome in its own bubble in that movie, but it really does help how we view Vader in the original trilogy, because we see full menace Vader here. And
brutal,
then
savage,
the moment he understands that he has a son that's still alive and stuff like that, his motives change in the original trilogy in the second film. And we no longer really see that Vader that we get in Rogue One. So I think it was important to see that. You know, I know he has certain things he did in the comics for sure, but for the general audience to be able to see what Vader's capable of in that way, I think was massive. And then also it softened the blow of seeing what he did to that village in Obi-Wan Kenobi, because we're like, Vader's walking down a street, aka another hallway. Something bad's about to happen. It allowed us to prepare for what he did to those people. But,
and in a lot of way with the Vader thing too, is like, it's sort of the first of, like I said, with other characters, you know, Star Wars can exist outside of that world. When it comes to Vader, it was our first like revisit of like, can Vader work not in the original movies? And we saw that movie and we go, yes. So get excited because Vader's possible now, you know, and then we get Obi-Wan Kenobi and we're like, yeah, Vader's possible now. They can do that, you know? So I think like seeing that scene in Rogue One also like reassured and just made everybody feel good about the future of the franchise, because we can always just keep making more Star Wars and it'll be fine. You know, they might not all hit, but this is proof of concept,
And Ben Mendelsohn played such a great worm.
Oh
That
yeah,
guy,
Krennic,
just
yes.
so-
and you'll talk to the Emperor.
Yeah. You'll tell
I'm
him as
still
much?
in command.
Yeah.
Love it.
Oh God. Oh, it's beautiful.
Yeah.
Yes. Or when he sarcastically says, "My condolences."
Yeah.
About
yeah. So good.
my condolences. All right. Next on the list, Disney Plus represent at number 3, The Mandalorian. Leapfrog some Skywalker saga films. Jon Favreau, Dave Filoni, bringing it. 2 seasons in the can. We obviously have more to go, but I think there's enough on our plate, as we've seen at least complete seasons, to add it on the rankings. So Lacey, why don't you kick us off with Mando? Where did you have it on your list? You had it at 3, right?
3.
So right in there. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
So Mando has changed the way that I view Star Wars. I think it's created completely original characters and taken its own kind of cultural impact for pop culture, like in a way that I didn't think Star Wars could get any bigger. With Grogu and with Mando, it's introduced a whole new group of fans. People didn't feel the need to get involved with everything else with Star Wars. There are people that are just Mando fans, and I love that. You see him everywhere. He's everywhere. All the toys, all the merch, just on Disney Plus all the time, all the commercials,
Transcended
signage.
Star Wars. He's beyond Star Wars.
He is straight pop culture, and I love seeing that because with the success of Mando means more Star Wars. So for me, The Mandalorian is number 3 because out of all the series that they've made so far, it is the most rewatchable. I could go back and rewatch Mando and be happy from start to end.
That's a
and
good
know, even though I know what's coming, and there's no episodes that I watch that I'm like, I'm not a fan of this episode. This episode doesn't do it. Like, they all are awesome. They all have their moments, and I just can't wait to see where this character is going next. He's just part of what I think of Star Wars now. He's one of my favorite characters.
And I know when we first watched, as it came out, week after week, there was a little bit of frustration with, the adventure of the week this week, and he didn't really do anything in that episode and stuff. And eventually you see the last episode, and you're like, all right, well, that did build up to something. But I do sometimes like the fact for the rewatch element, like you said, if I just want to watch that little 9-minute or 35-minute story, just because I want to watch him. I want to watch Alien in space and see the sci-fi version of Boba Fett and those people on that ship. I can watch
episode
that
6
in
of
a
season
bubble.
1. Yeah.
Yeah. But James, Mando, you had it at 4, so right in there. I had it at 3, so why did Mando get to leapfrog some stuff for you?
So sometimes you've probably heard the phrase, like, some people like the lore, some people like the war, right? So it's like the sort of the Force side, the Jedi and the Sith and all that stuff. And then there's also like the politics and the actual like people on the ground and the stormtroopers and all that stuff. And I think that Mando has done like probably the best job of blending those two worlds and personifying them perfectly in your title characters. I think the Mandalorian absolutely represents sort of the Rogue One, like realism, gritty. I'm just a person trying to make my way, make money, and I'm a bounty hunter. That whole thing meets the other side, which when Baby Yoda represents the Force and every character that comes with that. We're getting Luke's, we're getting Ahsoka's, we're getting other characters who would then have a reason to tell Mandalorian that about the energy field that binds us all together. You know what I mean? It's like those two worlds so perfectly come together. And I think like, as you do have, as you explained it, like the adventure of the week sort of thing, you have an opportunity to explore Star Wars in a different way, where you can celebrate everything that is cool about Star Wars. Like in this episode, we go to this planet because those types of planets are cool. In this episode, we go and we fly in one of these ships because one of the big things about Star Wars fandom is people really like the ships. It's like, yes, in all these other movies, we've gotten good examples of great ships, but it does feel like with the Razor Crest, and now the N1 Starfighter, it's like they're even celebrating the ships in that show. It's like every angle of Star Wars, they have somehow found a way to kind of bring it all together, and I just think they do a really good job at it. I mean, there's like the same thing that we said about other shows with the volume. There's like production things, and sometimes it feels small, and we're back on Tatooine again. You know, sometimes it's like that, but I think it's one of those things when you step back and look at the show as a whole, we all just sort of go like, yeah, but Mandalorian, right? It's so good, right? I think we all just kind of enjoy it. And I think that's because it has a little bit of everything that to which all fans go, yeah, there's some hangups, but that stuff was really cool. And I did really like that, and we can all sort of celebrate.
Yeah, I think The Mandalorian is, like, in a weird way, underrated right now. And it had so much pressure on it because, you know, you're ending the Skywalker saga a month after this show debuts. Like, this show was so important for the success of Star Wars from that point on, being the guinea pig, the first one, the first thing to debut on Disney Plus too. First, like, new live action series, I think, besides Star Wars. It debuted like the first day of Disney Plus.
We were calling it Mandalorian.
I did, yeah, because I didn't like Mandalorians that much, and I was like, I'm not sure what we're gonna get here. I bought in with the trailers. I was always a huge Jon Favreau fan. I like Dave Filoni, but I was always a huge Jon Favreau fan dating back to Swingers. So I always was in his corner. Lion King aside, not a big fan, but I think Jon Favreau is one of the better Star Wars writers we've had in a long time, and I think what he's good at is like sneaking up on you by developing the story without you realizing it. And he weaves certain things in and out of these episodes that may seem surface level and you can sort of cast them aside. But then when you get to the end of that season and you're like, oh wow, so that's why that person's here, and that's why he talked to that person, and then by the end of the second season, I'm sitting there watching, you know, the greatest hero in the history of Star Wars come in, and everyone's losing their mind that young Luke Skywalker's back to save the day. The episode's literally called The Rescue. The X-Wing comes in. We're all jumping off our couches, I'm sure. And I am heartbroken and devastated that Grogu is going with Luke Skywalker, the greatest hero in Star Wars history. And that is a testament to how strong of a bond they built between Din Djarin and the kid. And as a dad, that hit me, and I still, like, I get a little choked up thinking about it. And I remember I have a hard time rewatching that, him saying goodbye to him and stuff like that. And I know that maybe they got them back together too soon. I don't care. They need to be together. But that episode alone, I was like, Jon Favreau is a king. The fact that they pulled this off, and Filoni too. I'm not trying to disparage that, but Favreau wrote
and all the
both
secrets
seasons.
that Favreau's kept. Like Grogu
yeah,
in
with the
itself
Plo Koon
being...
decoy stuff, yeah, and introducing characters to the story, you know,
to live action,
to live action, Cobb Vanth, in the first episode of season 2. That episode felt like it was a movie that he directed. Yeah, Ahsoka Tano in live action. You said it good, James. It's a good blend, but it's also a great balance of what Jon Favreau tells us on the surface for, like, the Good Morning America crowd. Like, it's like getting your old action figures out, and I like playing with them, and I'm having such a good time. You know, this Ugnaught was a nobody in Empire Strikes Back. We're going to make him an important character, and we're going to do that a lot with these IG droids. But then when you peel that all back, he told a really powerful story of, again, found family and this hero's journey from going from this bounty hunter, doing things for cash, to really falling in love with this kid and wanting to do anything to protect him. And it's one of the more powerful things. And the fact that juxtaposed against the fact that it had to be a hit because it's the first one on Disney Plus, Bob Iger's banking on it. What is Star Wars on TV like in live action? And they pulled it off. And to be the first and pull it off, that's something to be said that a lot of people don't give it credit for, because maybe these other things don't get to happen without it. And we could say, you know, this series is better than this series is better than that. Mandalorian is the reason why it happened.
I think for long run series, there's a certain method that always seems to work for me. And I've said it about Dragon Ball, and I think John, you're gonna roll your eyes at this, but it's kind of one of the reasons why I like the Fast and Furious thing is that because they do something similar. It's as you meet enemies along the way, they eventually become your allies. And I think Mandalorian does a really good job at that with like Greef Karga, enemy at first, ally now. Cara Dune, enemy at first, ally now. You know, I mean, and you can go through the list: Boba Fett, Fennec Shand, even Black Chrysanthemum. You know, I mean that goes into Book of Boba Fett, but you know, you see that as Mandalorian 2.55 or whatever. Like I think as the story progresses, we meet people. Some people are truly evil, and those will always be your enemies. But as you meet people along the way, I think the reason when you see them later and they're friends, you look back at the whole journey. You look fondly back at the whole journey and being like, remember when we didn't like each other? And then remember all the ways that we got to how we are today? I think that Mandalorian is really setting itself up to be a long-term series that people look back on the whole landscape of it and say, man, what an adventure, what a journey.
Yeah.
That from the very beginning, and you go back and watch that first episode and he doesn't know like any of those characters, doesn't know Grogu, doesn't know. I mean, even Grogu himself was a target. You know, it was like he turned that character in. He thought he was going to get die or get eaten or something, you know, and it's like,
yeah,
how far we've come from that first episode to where we are now and how far we have still yet to go, I think is a reason that people look fondly on The Mandalorian.
Yeah. All right. So Mandalorian makes the podium. We got 2 more to go. Number 2, The Force Awakens. It was, I think, where was it on my list?
This is like when the runner-up gets announced, and so you know who the winner is.
Yeah. So number 2, Force Awakens. I had it at 2 on my list. I know it's Lacey's favorite. And James, you had it at 3, so we all had it on our podium. Lacey, why don't you kick us off with Force Awakens since it is your favorite? At number 2 on our list.
There's not much to say about TFA that I haven't said in
that's how I felt.
For almost 5 years that I've been doing this podcast. Everybody knows it's my favorite. It's my go-to Star Wars movie. Everything about it I think is absolute perfection, from the characters to the story to the pacing to the special effects and the locations. It's just perfect. I kind of feel for James now when he was talking about Rogue One. It's like even the music, like Rey's theme is, I think, one of, if not the best Star Wars character theme. It's still my phone ringtone. I have such fond moments of seeing the trailer for the first time at Celebration, to actually engaging with the guest, with Daisy Ridley and John Boyega before they were even celebrities, really, and just being like, these people don't even know what's about to happen to them, to just like going to Force Fridays and all the toys and just being a part of everything that's gearing up to Star Wars is back. It's just a feeling that will never change.
Absolutely. I completely agree with that, Lacey. Like, I think the special thing about Force Awakens, and I was kind of hinting at this earlier when I was talking about Rogue One, is there's something special about the first. And I think that's what you were getting at too. I think that the Force Awakens just encapsulates everything about the last 30-some years of Star Wars that we grew up with our families, and we had discussions with our friends, and we've debated over the merits of the prequels and everything, and all of that coming back. I mean, you can see it in the box office numbers. It's not like people don't like Star Wars movies. anymore. It's just that we were so excited for The Force Awakens. And I think the craziest thing about it is that because there were there were expectations to Star Wars, so merit's there on like JJ landing it and actually doing something cool. I just think that there sort of was no expectations. Like, who's Rey? Well, I don't know. Let's find out. Who's Finn?
Yeah.
I don't know. Let's find out.
The period
I don't
after
care
TFA
who she is.
just so wonderful that who's who, what is her background, like all that kind of collective fandom guessing game was one of the highlights of being a Star Wars fan.
It's weird to say that like that movie could have had such high expectations where like no matter what they did, it was going to fail, because that's an example for a lot of stuff. Like any sequel, basically, especially ones that went like, it's been 20 years and we're coming back to do so-and-so 2, or whatever. It's like there's all these weird expectations behind that stuff. I don't know how Star Wars managed to pull it off, but The Force Awakens, it seemed like everybody went in being like, I literally just do not care. Show me what it is, and then I will start caring. It's like we all hit the reset button or something, and we just accepted that this was going to be the new Star Wars, and we were going in with all of the previous feelings we had about Star Wars and just putting it on this new one and saying, now go, like now run, I think that to me is the reason that The Force Awakens works. It works as a movie, it works as a story, it works as a setup, between all the things that we're probably going to talk about, as far as like the practical and the locations and, the story, just all of that. But I think the reason it really holds a place in everybody's hearts as like the reason it would be so high on this list is sort of the, I don't want to say nostalgia, that's not the right word, but it's that same feeling of like, yes, like that's what I want. I'm excited. I just love that thing. So yeah, I think Force Awakens is that.
I'll add on top of that the lead up to The Force Awakens also. It stood on its own. There was no other things that people were looking at the time for Star Wars. That was it. That was the goal. That was the target. And people talk about how it's too much nostalgia and it's too much like A New Hope and stuff like that. I have nostalgia for The Force Awakens now.
Yeah.
7 years later. That feeling I felt around that time, I want to feel that all the time as a Star Wars fan. And I don't always feel that way. But also, obviously Lawrence Kasdan's my favorite writer. They brought him back, and that like blew my mind. And I admire JJ. And knowing that we're getting the return of the big three, but also meeting these new people, it was like all the like the new and the old, and the way it came together. And they landed again. They stuck the landing with a big return, sort of like The Mandalorian. Like had to start things for Disney Plus. Force Awakens had to restart Star Wars, and they did it. A lot of things don't work out as well if that movie doesn't, and they pulled it off. So I have nothing but good feelings thinking about that time, the build up to it, all the toys, everything after it, speculating, getting into podcasting, all that stuff. But also the movie itself, I can rewatch it now and it just feels good. Feels real good.
It's a lot easier to talk about our earlier picks on this list because like we're almost like defending like why they're so low, and here's some things we like about them, so they're not bad, but I think this one and the next one, I think we're all going to be like, what haven't we said,
Right. So, the next one, I didn't realize that this would be the case, but Solo wound up being number 1 on our list. And I know there are people out there like, oh, guys, enough with the Solo stuff.
Yeah.
But, Solo in itself, besides us wanting a sequel, I think is a very underrated Star Wars movie. I think it's a movie that deserved better. I think it's one of the movies that is actually gaining more and more fans as it goes over time. And people are coming around to it. Even people who didn't like it at first, I see saying like, you know what? I went back and after all the hoopla's gone about the production stuff, that I did like Solo. And what I love about Solo, I'm not going to get too far in the weeds with it, is just that when I talk to people who like it, they're like, yeah, because it's just a fun romp. And I'm like, it is, but it's also a lot deeper if you really pay attention in terms of the construction of who Han Solo becomes at the end of the movie. And that was confirmed as intentions by Lawrence Kasdan and Alden Ehrenreich. He becomes that hardened sort of jaded person by the end because of everything that happens in the movie, which is a very fun movie, and they tell it in a great way, but just all the beats are there. It was George Lucas's idea to make this movie. Ron Howard is an OG Lucasfilm guy. He got his start there with acting and in the movies. Lawrence Kasdan writing it, the greatest Star Wars composer. John Williams does the score for the theme. I mean, and then John Powell follows that up. What more can you ask for if you're a diehard old school Star Wars fan? And I thought Alden Ehrenreich knocked it out of the park. Jonas, fantastic. The whole cast. You know how I feel about Solo. So I could watch that movie anytime, any day. I absolutely love Solo.
Mm-hmm. Well, I was joking, like, what more is there to say? I mean, like, Solo did end up on all of our lists. I think, John, you had it number 1. I had it number 2. Lacey had it number 2, right? Is that right?
Yep.
Yeah. And I think it's like, okay, looking at my number 1, like, sometimes people come up and they're like, oh, I didn't really like Rogue One, right? And I get, like, immediately like, what didn't you like about Rogue One, you know? And I don't feel that more than anything with Solo, because or more than any other movie, I think Solo's the number 1 where I feel I get that feeling. And I think that's because I can't find problems with it, really. But yet when people talk about it in that negative light of like, Solo, whatever, and it gets pushed off, I don't think Rogue One gets pushed off as much. I think Solo gets pushed off a lot. And I'm like, I hear what you're saying about the movie, and I don't agree with you. Like, in some of these other ones, like, I do see what you're saying about Last Jedi. I do see what you're saying about, you know, The Rise of Skywalker, Mandalorian, or anything. You know, there are certain aspects of that piece of property that I go, yeah, okay, so maybe, maybe it's more for me, and it's not so much for you. I see your angle on that. I have such a hard time with people who don't get Solo or don't, like, it doesn't connect with them. And I'm like, I hear what you're saying about it. And I'm like, did you watch the movie? Like, the negative things about it, I feel upset sometimes because I'm like, I don't think you saw the same movie. You need to go rewatch it or something. And it almost makes me think that it has become a movie that somebody just saw once, and then, like, their friends talked about negative about it, and they're like, yeah, and, like, they don't really have a good opinion on it, a personal opinion or something. I don't know. I'm making that up, but it's like I struggle to find why people don't like that movie. And I think that's why we are so passionate about the Make Solo 2 Happen thing, because we're like, oh, we just don't get it. We just honestly just do not get it. This is a great Star Wars movie.
Yeah.
That was long-winded. Sorry.
It's okay. Quickly, I just think that, because you guys have been listening now for quite a while, I think, Solo is a really good, fun movie to watch. I said this a long time ago. We were doing a Kessel Run where it was like, what scene would you show to someone that's never seen Star Wars? And I picked the whole Kessel Run sequence of Han Solo flying the Falcon and dealing with the TIE fighters and everything like that. I've never smiled more than that sequence. Like, I had the biggest smile on my face from the moment I saw it, and he started flying. Incredible. And he had all his little tricks, and, Chewie jumps in the seat with him, and it's straight Star Wars fun, perfection, awesomeness. And I think Kira is one of the best Star Wars characters ever created. And that's just one of the few reasons I love Solo.
An old school, like, Hollywood romance. Like, Gone with the Wind type romance with Kira and Han. I think Star Wars has been missing that, as you point out often, Lacey.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, we love Solo here, but we love all these movies. So the final list, number 1, Solo. Number 2, The Force Awakens. Number 3, The Mandalorian. Number 4, Rogue One. Number 5, The Rise of Skywalker. 6, The Last Jedi. 7, Obi-Wan Kenobi. And 8, The Book of Boba Fett. And we'll revisit these later. But we want to thank everybody for listening and watching and being a part of TRB. Make sure you subscribe everywhere. Tell a friend. Rate us. Star Wars Newsnet for all of your Star Wars news, of course. And patreon.com/resistance broadcast if you want to support what we do here. Tiers start at just $5 per month. Your support means a great deal to us and allows us to do more, and in addition to what we're already doing now. So go check it out. Patreon.com/resistance broadcast. Your support would mean a great deal to us. to allow us to grow what we do here at TRB. So thank you. Special shout out to our generals and spice runners: CARMELO, John RISI, JEDTA Rosewater, Frank Grande, Darth HURICANE, Nick KRATZ, Christian Morales, Brian Smith, Matt CHITTY, DANI, Mike Ramori, Matt Heath, Chris White, Brendan McLaughlin, COUNTPEPTO, Samuel Zilke, Sneaky Zebra, and Val TRICHKOV, and our spice runners: David PROBUS, Neil Shaw, Kendall GELNER, Ryan WAARA, Dave HORNAK, Thomas HENNESSY, Andrew STALEY, Jeremy Myers, and Michael Fry. Thank you all for your support, and to all of our patrons in the base, thank you, thank you, thank you. You can find me on Twitter at Johnny Hoey, writing and editing at Star Wars Newsnet, and my movie podcast, Just Like the Movies. James?
Twitter and Instagram both at Myra Trunks.
Lacey?
Twitter and Instagram at Lacey Gilleran.
And Lacey's airport limousine service, of course. All right, we'll be back on Wednesday. Me, Lacey, James will be on vacay, but maybe a guest. We'll let you know. But enjoy your weeks. We hope you enjoy this episode, and we'll see you next time right here on TRB. See you around, kids.